just after 6 a.m. at Silverton at the campground. Crazy windy and stormy last night. Checked the Bureau of Meteorology site this morning. Apparently gusts of 40 kilometers an hour. So yeah, just about pushed the tent over. Should have had more guy ropes, but I guess that's what happens when you set up in the night, because we got here late after getting stuck at Menindee yesterday. So sunrise looks good. Looking forward to a hot breakfast, I know that. So I didn't get heaps of sleep last night. Yeah, I haven't seen Mark this morning yet. So we'll see what happens.
Hey guys, so as you just heard, it's very definitely the morning after the night before. So this is about 7:30. We're all packed up and heading to the Silverton Hotel for a hot breakfast. You can see on the video there with the amount of water laying around, how wet it's been. Yeah, through the night, half my tent collapsed. I woke up at like 2 in the morning with the tent half collapsed and water coming in through one of the seams because it was pooling there because the tent had collapsed. Yeah, I've never had any issues with the Coleman instant up tents that I've used for camping for the last few years, but I've also never used it before in high wind conditions. Something I discovered on this trip, that setting up and packing down that thing when there's a lot of wind around and you try to do it by yourself is quite challenging. Again, you can see here as we're heading out to the main road and heading west into Silverton Township, it's very wet. So yeah, was well and truly looking forward to a hot breakfast. Silverton's not a big town. Would have loved to have spent more time there. There's the Mad Max Museum at Silverton, which we didn't get a chance to visit. We obviously got in late the night before, and this is 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. We're going to the hotel for breakfast and then hitting the road from there. So something I'll probably come back with the family and check out another time. As you can see, we're not the first ones to breakfast by a long shot. Plenty of other people up and mobile before us that are on the variety trip. But yeah, there was well catered for, so there was no issues about missing out on breakfast or anything like that. That dual cab 79 that you can see there directly ahead, not part of the variety trip, but it is on portal axles. Check out the clearance on that thing. I don't think he was having too many issues anywhere. You can see how wet that main road is. And this is inside the hotel, some memorabilia from when they were filming Mad Max and some other movies out here, which was really cool to see. Razorback. So it's definitely well worth the visit. There's so much to see. Had ourselves a good breakfast and loaded up, and we're getting mobile. So this particular day, another day where we weren't able to follow the planned route that the officials had actually planned for the trip. We were originally heading west from here and up the border. Those tracks were closed both due to filming of a Hollywood movie and also just due to weather conditions and track conditions. So we're actually all heading in to Broken Hill, not in a convoy per se. Everybody was just making their own time. We were recommended to get groceries at Broken Hill because this was the first time they'd flagged with us that we may not get to Birdsville. You can see there plenty of water over the road in different spots. But yeah, this was the first time they'd flagged with us at breakfast this morning and said, look guys, Diamantina River's flooded, may not actually get into Broken Hill. If you're planning on buying cooking supplies and food at Broken Hill, now's probably the time to do it. So they gave us all sort of an hour and a half to get into Broken Hill and get to a supermarket and purchase our supplies for the next few days where we were self-catering, and then regroup at a roadside stop north of Broken Hill. Just on the right of frame there, that's some of the current mining activity. You can see how close it is actually to the town of Broken Hill. Again, that's something that would have been great to go and check out. We just didn't have the time. We went straight to the supermarket, got our supplies, loaded them in the car, and hit the road and headed north. And we're still one of the last. Apparently, we must take a long time shopping. We were still one of the last to actually get to the stopping point where we're regrouping. You can see here a couple of the officials directing everybody into this roadside stop just to make sure we all regroup, and then everybody's been accounted for. They know everybody's left Broken Hill, and we're all on the Silver City Highway heading north. So the amended plan for today is basically on the bitumen north to Packsaddle, lunch at Packsaddle at the roadhouse there, great little spot, and then a little bit further north from Packsaddle towards Tipoburra, and turning left at just before Tipoburra and heading across to Cameron Corner. A little bit pushed for time, so I didn't get a chance to drop a map in for this one, but really we're driving on main roads 90% of the way, so you can probably figure it out. Now you can probably, even though I've adjusted the volume a little bit, you can probably hear that noise. It was crazy windy out here north of Broken Hill. Apparently it's not always like this, but certainly at this particular time it was crazy windy. Yeah, just a quick stop there, changing the batteries of the GoPro, and we waved to a few of our compatriots. And as you probably just saw with the vehicle coming towards us, there was more than a few spots like this. They seem to not believe in building bridges. I guess the little creeks and what have you and the overland flows here don't happen terribly often. So there's all these sections where there's dips in the road, and it's like a causeway almost, a floodway. Apparently it's not wet all that often, so when it is, you just drive through it. That's just how it is. Not really any bridges out here, and you can see how green it is. Again, that's apparently quite unusual. It was just a really nice clear day, and just chewing up the miles and chewing up the fuel as well, as you'll hear later on. Ended up averaging about 16 litres per 100 kilometres on this section of the trip, purely due to the crazy wind out there. And you know, that's the kind of mileage I get in the high country, climbing hills, or you might expect to get that towing. Large dam there on the left hand side, almost missed it with the colour of the water there. You can see the amount of silt that had been stirred up, and yeah, yet another one of these floodways across the highway. Some roads guys there just keeping an eye on things. Now that building on the left there, I believe, is a historic woolshed. Again, we didn't stop. We sort of wanted to keep our position, at least the driver did, in the convoy. A couple of people did stop and check it out. Yeah, just a big open expanse of land out here. I haven't shown too much of this. You know, there's hundreds of kilometres between each of these, across these shots, but you know, really just wanted to give you an idea of the countryside, heading north from Broken Hill through to Packsaddle, and it's a good couple of hours drive. And bends like this are pretty rare. Most of it's just dead straight, driving north. Yes, another section of the highway with some water over it. hit another one. Some of these have had quite a bit of silt washed across the road. It looks like it's been pushed away by road crews recently. So again, it shows you the sort of weather that's been going on through here prior to us even arriving. And I believe we're coming into Packsaddle now with that 80 km/h sign. Yep, there's the Packsaddle sign just there. Great little roadhouse. If you're heading this way, well worth a stop. Plenty of parking both sides of the highway. And that white cube on the right hand side there is the diesel station. They have a system out here where you can get a card and a code and you can basically self-serve. We hadn't done that, didn't know about it, but highly recommend you plan ahead and do that. It will make getting fuel a lot easier. Hey guys, Jason here. Now, I don't normally do a lot of these in-car videos. This is halfway through day 2 of the Variety 4-wheel drive adventure. So we've just come up the highway and it was pretty much all highway driving because the roads we're going to take west of Silverton just were not open due to weather conditions. So we've come straight up the highway about 170 k's to Packsaddle. Now the wind out here is something else, and with the rain we've had there was water over the road in several locations, but the wind has got to be experienced to be believed. So the Pajero, we're sitting on 100 kilometres an hour. We've averaged 16 litres per 100 k's on the bitumen. Now, that's the kind of fuel usage I would normally be getting off-road, climbing mountains in the Vic High Country. So 16 litres per 100 k's on the bitumen with the tyres at 39 psi. We've also, the engine's been working pretty hard to fight that wind. We were sitting on 2,500 RPMs. Just to maintain 100 k's an hour, and the transmission temp was up to 110 degrees, so just over 100 degrees some of the times. Again, just working so hard in the face of this wind. So the wind out here is like nothing else. It did blow my tent down last night, so that was fun. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But here we are at Packsaddle at the Roadhouse, get some lunch and pushing on to Cameron's Corner. So sorted out a tasty lunch there at the Roadhouse. The officials had called ahead as we weren't planning to stop there originally, and 80 odd people rocking up for lunch unexpected is going to create some havoc. So they were ready for us and looked after us really well. Really good people. So from here it's a relatively short run north from Packsaddle, almost to Tipoburra. There were a few people that didn't get fuel at Packsaddle because we had to pay cash, and opted to get it at Tipoburra. As you see on the screen there, this is a bit of a novelty. It's not often you get to drive on a runway. So this section of the highway is an emergency airstrip, so they request no overtaking for this section. It's about 1.5 k's long. You can see how much wider it is to facilitate plane landings if required. So one of those outback things that you're just not used to seeing. We were all looking up at the sky going, well, how do you know if a plane's landing? But I'm guessing if it's coming in low enough to land, you're going to hear it coming and you'll know about it and you get out of the way. As you can see, it's a decently long runway. And look, I put this whole section in here just so you could see just how long this emergency airstrip or runway is. So line markings marking the end of it there, and back to the normal highway. So pretty amazing. Not surprisingly, continuing north, more straight bitumen, flat bitumen, with some of that red dirt. A few times we did see a bit of dust being blown up across the ground. This is one of the times I've managed to catch it on film. wasn't all that common with the rain they've had. There was a fair bit of vegetation around, a lot more than normal. And again, another one of those puddles across section of the road there. They were prolific. So we're just coming up to the turnoff just before Tipoburra. So it's about 130 k's from Packsaddle to this turnoff here, and as you can see, we're pulled over. There's the road condition signs there, and as you can see, one of the roads is closed and the other main track is four-wheel drive only. You get pretty used to looking for those signs. So the reason we were pulled over there again was to let the officials who were checking the track get ahead of us. And this section is sort of off-road. It's a fairly well-formed road, so it's not four-wheel driving, it's more like touring. But look, honestly, again, after half to two-thirds of a day on the bitumen, we're just happy to get on some dirt. So we've dropped the tyre pressures down to 25 psi on the front and 27 psi on the back. I always usually have a slight difference in tyre pressures because my vehicle's a little bit heavier on the rear axles than the front. And here we are. So I was quite surprised by these Outback tracks. They're all quite wide, but in many sections they have a very defined track where the wheel tracks run, and basically everyone, no matter what direction they're driving, kind of drives, as you'll see. So, you know, this section here is probably a good example of that. And you can certainly see evidence where in recent times it has been quite soft. So I did find these really wide Outback tracks sort of a little bit of a choose your own adventure. We did kind of get some dunes at times, which provided a little bit of interest, but honestly this was pretty fun after several hours of driving on the bitumen. I mean, we left Silverton I think it was about 9:30 by the time we got on the road after breakfast, so we've been on bitumen since 9:30. It was probably 3 in the afternoon or something by the time we got here. It was just nice to get off road. Honestly, I pretty much felt like I was driving in Cigarelli or something. It was pretty good, really good surface. You do have to keep an eye out for potholes and such things on these tracks. This section from Tipoburra to Cameron Corner was really good. There wasn't too much of that, but as you'll see later on, some other sections certainly had some issues. By and large, this was as good as, better than some bitumen roads in terms of the surface conditions. And again, the convoy was all in contact by radio, so we knew if there was vehicles coming the other way. So you will see me on the odd right-hand corner taking the inside line. Visibility was pretty good out here. Obviously, it's fairly flat, and you can see what's coming. You can also see if there's any dust indicating vehicles might be coming. So despite taking the inside line on some of those corners, we were driving safely. And again, this is all pretty well signposted. Cameron Corner is a popular destination, so finding your way out here is not really a big deal. Of course, it's worthwhile to have a good map, and I personally prefer having a good GPS system. Yeah, it's pretty amazing driving across the desert here as the sun's going down. Really cool sunset happening up ahead. You can see a bit of the desert dust on the road. And this was our first real taste of what was to come ahead, basically, with some fair dinkum desert driving between Cameron Corner and Inaminka on both the Strzelecki and the old Strzelecki tracks. Just with the lighting, the footage has come out from the GoPro a little dark, but visibility was a lot better. This was crossing a floodplain or inland lake. Obviously, during the wet season this fills up. It was pretty dry at the time we were there, a little bit damp, but good firm base, so nothing to worry about too much. You do hear stories of these inland lakes and people breaking the crust on them, so just conscious of that. And we did hit that corner at a good speed, and the eagle-eyed among you might have noticed the car drift a little bit. I have to say my passenger was pretty good. He didn't complain once about my driving. We just saw one of the bypass tracks there, so that's a common feature here. You can see this water has obviously been blocking more of the track than it is currently, and there's the bypass track rejoining. So you do see that quite a lot on these Outback tracks. It's usually worth paying attention to. It's there for a reason. We knew the conditions had been quite wet and dried up a little bit, so we're happy to sort of take our chances and keep going. Besides which, you know, we probably wouldn't have minded if we get another chance to use the max tracks. So the run through from Tipoburra to Cameron Corner, it's probably a bit over 100 k's or so. At 150, I think, 160 k's, depending exactly which way you go. So it's around about 2 hours from the turn off just before Tipoburra to the Cameron Corner store. Cameron Corner, of course, is where the borders of South Australia, New South Wales and Queensland all meet. So fairly remote. And yeah, as I said earlier, this my first time this far west for sure, and first time desert driving, and I was really surprised at how well formed these roads are. As you'll see probably on the next day or two, there's a surprising amount of infrastructure out here in the desert in terms of oil and gas infrastructure, so there's a lot of trucks using these roads, and I'm guessing that's got something to do with the condition of them. Sections like this where you've got a few dunes, you really couldn't see too far ahead, and it was hard to know just how far it might be to Cameron Corner. Certainly we didn't have a clear picture of how far we had to go. We were just following the road and keeping on going. You might have just heard that sound there. It actually plays an animal noise to keep camels and dingoes away. We're just about coming up on the New South Wales South Australian border, and of course running along that border is the Dingo fence, which is one of the longest man-made structures in the world apparently. It was built back in the 1880s, and it's just over 5,500 kilometres long. Actually runs from the South Australian coast across South Australia to the New South Wales South Australian border, up to Cameron Corner, and then across the New South Wales Queensland border before working its way to southeast Queensland. So sections of it are actually maintained and patrolled. The whole idea was to keep dingoes and wild dogs, mostly dingoes, out of southeastern Australia, where farming activities, cattle and sheep and the like, were being done intensively, and the aim was to prevent stock losses from the dingoes. Quite an amazing undertaking, and even more amazing that they apparently built the whole thing in just 5 years. So here we are actually getting to that border. We weren't quite as close as I had initially thought. So this is the dingo fence and the New South Wales South Australian border. See the road off to the right hand side there, patrolling along the fence. Now once you cross through from New South Wales into South Australia, it's really not too far, and you've got this turn off to your right hand side coming up, where you head down to the Cameron Corner store. Easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. And just on the far right of the frame there, as the text has come up on the screen, is where the actual post is that marks the meeting place of the three borders. So it's actually before you cross this cattle gate into the corner store here. That's the main road straight ahead, back up into Queensland. So one of the more remote outposts in this part of Australia, the Cameron Corner store. Some tri-state golf if you're that way inclined. They do have a fair bit of solar power here, but they also have a diesel generator. And diesel is from this tank on the tank stand here. So look, thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. It's not our usual four-wheel drive content, but it's a bit of a different trip this one. And we certainly enjoyed getting out of the desert. Hope you enjoyed watching the videos as well. Until the next one, tell me what you thought down below. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel. Every new subscription certainly helps, and I really appreciate it. So thanks for your support, guys. Catch you in the next video.